Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The truth arrives like a sudden storm, dark and unsettling, shattering any illusion of safety Dylan thought she had finally rebuilt. What once felt like a distant, uncomfortable past now creeps into her present with terrifying clarity, as the identity of her stalker is revealed in the most disturbing way imaginable. It isn't a stranger lurking in the shadows or some faceless threat. It's Remy Price, her own toxic cousin, a man she barely knew but somehow feared instinctively. The revelation feels almost unreal, like something pulled from a nightmare rather than real life, yet every piece of evidence points directly to him. The disguise, the wig, the unsettling presence inside Forrester Creations, it was all Remy, watching her, studying her, invading her fragile sense of security. And as the shock settles into a heavy, suffocating dread, one thing becomes painfully clear. Remy hasn't changed at all. Whatever darkness lived inside him before is still very much alive, and now it's focused entirely on Dylan. The pieces begin to fall into place with chilling precision, each one more disturbing than the last. The eerie phone calls, the distorted voice creeping through the line like a ghost. It was Remy all along, hiding behind a voice changer, convincing himself he was being clever. He even justified it, claiming he needed to stay cautious in case Dylan had him on speaker, as though that somehow made his behavior reasonable instead of deeply unsettling. But nothing about it feels clever to Dylan. It feels calculated, obsessive, and terrifyingly invasive. And then came the moment that shattered any remaining doubt. Remy slipping into her workplace in disguise, watching her from behind that false identity, and finally revealing himself in a way that left her shaken to the core. He tries to downplay it, insisting the disguise was just a way to talk to her, but the excuse falls flat, hollow, and absurd. A normal person would simply call, speak plainly, act with even a shred of decency. But Remy has never been that kind of person, and now Dylan sees that truth more clearly than ever. Fear quickly gives way to anger, sharp and cutting, as Dylan confronts him with everything she's learned. The Forresters would be horrified if they saw him there, she warns, but even more than that, she is disgusted, deeply, viscerally disgusted by the truth of what he's done. The revelation of the deepfake videos involving Electra Forrester hits like a punch to the gut, leaving no room for ambiguity about the kind of person Remy truly is. Dylan doesn't just feel uncomfortable being associated with him. She wants distance, complete and absolute. Their connection, already weak from a childhood spent apart, now feels like a burden she never asked for. They may share blood, but there is no bond, no loyalty, no shared history strong enough to excuse what he's become. And as Remy stands there insisting he's changed, his words ring hollow, contradicted by every action, every smirk, every deflection that follows. When Dylan tells him she doesn't even recognize him anymore, it lands with a quiet but powerful finality. Yet Remy brushes it aside with alarming ease. He minimizes everything, even going so far as to suggest Electra exaggerated the damage he caused, reducing her trauma to something trivial and overblown. That moment alone exposes the truth more clearly than anything else. Remy isn't remorseful, he isn't reflective, and he certainly isn't reformed. Dylan pushes back, refusing to let him rewrite reality, reminding him that what he did wasn't harmless. It was cruel, invasive, and deeply damaging. But instead of owning that truth, Remy shifts the narrative, grasping for leverage wherever he can find it. He brings up the job, claiming he helped her become an art teacher, twisting a simple act, sharing an opportunity, into something she supposedly owes him for. The logic is warped, delusional even, but beneath it lies something far more dangerous: expectation. That expectation soon begins to reveal itself, piece by piece, as Remy's true intentions start to take shape. At the center of it all is Deacon Sharp, the man Remy clearly hasn't let go of. There's a desperation in his pursuit, a need to reclaim something he believes he lost, and now he's looking at Dylan as the key to making that happen. He's already approached Deacon once, making his case, but the response was lukewarm at best, far from the reconciliation he wanted. And so, in his mind, Dylan becomes the solution, the bridge that can reconnect what's been broken. If he's been watching her, as it now seems likely, then he knows about her growing friendship with Deacon, and that knowledge gives him a dangerous sense of opportunity. It's not hard to imagine him pressuring her, demanding she speak on his behalf, convince Deacon to give him another chance, to see him as someone worth trusting again. But the reality of that request is as impossible as it is unfair. Dylan has no reason, no desire, to advocate for someone who has proven himself so deeply untrustworthy. She knows why Deacon walked away, knows that it was Remy's actions that destroyed whatever connection they once had. The deepfake scandal wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal, one that cut deep enough to end things completely. And yet Remy clings to the idea that he can fix it, that he can become the person Deacon deserves, even as his current behavior proves the opposite. The contradiction is glaring, almost surreal, and Dylan sees it for exactly what it is, a lie Remy is telling himself, one he now expects her to help sell to others. As if that weren't enough, another layer of manipulation begins to emerge, even more complex and even more dangerous. Remy may not just want Deacon back, he may want redemption in the eyes of Electra as well. The logic, twisted as it is, seems to follow a pattern in his mind. If Electra forgives him, then Deacon might reconsider, and his reputation might begin to heal. But achieving that would require something nearly impossible, convincing Electra to overlook the trauma, the humiliation, the violation of trust. And worse, it would require Dylan to step into that role, to advocate for a man she barely wants to acknowledge, let alone defend. The situation becomes even more fragile when considering the truth Dylan is hiding. If Electra learns that she and Remy are cousins, the fallout would be immediate and severe. Trust would shatter, friendships would collapse, and any chance Dylan had at stability would slip through her fingers. And yet, Remy doesn't seem concerned with the consequences, only with the outcome he desires. He doesn't care how difficult, how unrealistic, or how damaging his demands might be. He simply expects them to be fulfilled. Whether it's convincing Deacon, persuading Electra, or even helping him secure a job to stay close to the life he lost, Remy is building a list of expectations that grows more unreasonable by the moment. A position at Forrester seems unlikely, almost laughable given his history, but somewhere like Il Giardino, close to Deacon, within reach, feels more within his sights. He may even expect Dylan to make that happen too, to once again act as his connection, his way back in. But beneath all of these demands lies the most dangerous element of all: leverage. Remy holds a truth that could unravel everything Dylan has worked so hard to rebuild. Her job, her apartment, her fragile sense of normalcy. All of it hangs in the balance if he decides to expose her connection to him. The threat doesn't need to be spoken outright. It lingers in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. He could twist the narrative, paint her as complicit, claim she knew everything, that she was part of his schemes all along. He could destroy her reputation with a few carefully chosen lies, turning friends into enemies and stability into chaos. And the worst part is, people might believe him. The fear of losing everything becomes a constant shadow over Dylan's every thought, every decision. If Remy follows through, she could lose her job at Forrester, her place to live, her chance at a fresh start. The life she clawed her way out of, the nights spent in her car, the desperation of survival, could come rushing back in an instant. And Remy knows that. He understands the power he holds, and that makes him all the more dangerous. Because when someone like him feels entitled to control another person's life, there's no limit to how far they'll go. And so Dylan finds herself trapped in a situation that feels impossible to escape, caught between protecting her future and refusing to enable the very person threatening to destroy it. Remy's return isn't just an inconvenience, it's a storm, one that threatens to tear apart everything she's built. And as the tension rises, one question lingers in the air, heavy with dread and uncertainty. How far is Remy willing to go? And what will Dylan be forced to sacrifice to survive it? The tension doesn't ease. It tightens, slowly and relentlessly, like a noose pulling tighter with every passing moment, every unspoken threat, every calculated glance from Remy. Dylan can feel it in the pit of her stomach, that creeping sense that she is no longer in control of her own life, that every step she takes is being watched, measured, and quietly manipulated by someone who thrives on control. Remy doesn't need to shout or make dramatic threats. His power lies in suggestion, in the quiet implication of what he could do if she refuses him. And the more Dylan thinks about it, the more she realizes just how fragile her new life truly is, how easily it could all be taken away with a single revelation. The job she fought so hard to earn, the apartment that finally gave her a sense of dignity, the friendships she carefully built from nothing. They are all standing on a foundation that Remy could shatter without hesitation. It's not just fear that grips her now, but a suffocating pressure, the kind that forces impossible choices onto people who have already endured too much. Remy, on the other hand, moves through it all with a chilling sense of confidence, as though he has already decided how this story will unfold and is simply waiting for Dylan to fall into her role. He circles back to Deacon again and again, unable or unwilling to let go of what he's lost, clinging to the belief that it can all be restored if Dylan just does what he asks. In his mind, it's simple. She talks to Deacon, puts in a good word, softens his stance, and suddenly the door opens again. But reality isn't that forgiving, and Dylan knows it. She knows that Deacon isn't naive, that he's already been burned once, that the betrayal of those deep fakes cut deeper than Remy is willing to admit. Trying to convince him wouldn't just be difficult, it would be dishonest, a betrayal of her own values and the fragile trust she's begun to build with him. And yet, the thought lingers, dark and unavoidable. What happens if she refuses? That question leads her into even darker territory, where the consequences aren't just hypothetical, they feel inevitable. Remy could expose everything, twist every interaction she's had with Electra and Will into something sinister, something calculated and cruel. He could claim she knew about the deepfakes all along, that she befriended Electra under false pretenses, that every smile, every moment of support was just part of some larger manipulation. It's absurd, completely detached from the truth, but Dylan understands something terrifying. Truth doesn't always matter when doubt is introduced. All it takes is a seed of suspicion, and suddenly everything she's built begins to unravel. The Forresters, already protective of their own, might not take the risk. They might not wait for explanations. They could simply cut her loose. And then there's Electra, whose pain still lingers beneath the surface, raw and unresolved. Dylan knows there is no version of this where Electra would calmly listen to her defend Remy, not after everything that's been done. The humiliation, the violation, the emotional scars. It's too much, too personal, too damaging to simply forgive. Even approaching the subject feels like stepping into a fire she won't come out of unburned. And if the truth about her connection to Remy comes out in the process, it wouldn't just end their fragile connection. It would destroy it completely. Electra would feel betrayed all over again, and this time, Dylan would be the one standing at the center of that betrayal. The weight of that possibility sits heavy on her chest, making every breath feel just a little harder than the last. Still, Remy presses forward, his expectations growing more demanding, more intrusive, as though he genuinely believes Dylan exists to fix the damage he's caused. Now the idea of a job enters the picture, another piece of his carefully constructed plan to rebuild his life without ever taking true responsibility for it. Forrester Creations is clearly out of reach, a fantasy too far removed from reality. But Il Giardino, that feels possible in his mind. Close to Deacon, close to the life he wants back, close enough to keep inserting himself into a world that has already rejected him. And once again, Dylan becomes the tool, the connection he intends to use to make it happen. It doesn't matter that Deacon already gave him a chance, that he offered him not just a job, but a place to stay, only to have that trust shattered in the most disturbing way. Remy doesn't dwell on that betrayal. He simply moves past it, as if expecting others to do the same. But Dylan remembers. She remembers how far she had fallen, how alone she was when she had nothing, sleeping in her car, scavenging for food, struggling just to survive another day. And the truth cuts deeper than anything Remy says. He knew. He knew she was out there, struggling, barely holding on, and he did nothing. No offer of help, no place to stay, no sign of the family loyalty he now so conveniently claims. That reality strips away any illusion he tries to create about who he is now. A person who could ignore that kind of suffering doesn't simply change overnight, not without genuine remorse, not without accountability. And Remy shows neither. Yet even with all of that clarity, Dylan finds herself trapped, because understanding who Remy is doesn't make him any less dangerous. If anything, it makes the situation more terrifying, because she knows exactly what he's capable of. He doesn't need truth on his side, he only needs opportunity, and right now, he has plenty of it. Every connection she's made, every relationship she values, every fragile piece of stability she's built, it's all leverage in his hands. And the more he pushes, the more she begins to feel like there's no clean way out, no path that doesn't cost her something deeply important. As the days unfold, the pressure builds into something almost unbearable, forcing Dylan into a corner she never wanted to be in. Every choice feels wrong. Every option comes with consequences she can't fully control. Helping Remy would mean betraying people who trust her, compromising her own sense of right and wrong, and possibly causing even more harm. Refusing him could mean losing everything: her job, her home, her reputation, her future. It's a cruel, calculated trap, one designed to leave her with no real escape, only different forms of loss. And somewhere within that growing storm, one unsettling truth begins to take shape. This isn't just about what Remy wants anymore. It's about how far he's willing to go to get it, and whether Dylan can find the strength to stand her ground when everything she's built hangs in the balance. Because if Remy decides to follow through on his threats, the fallout won't just shake her world, it will tear it apart completely, leaving her to pick up the pieces once again, if there are any pieces left to pick up at all. The breaking point doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in quietly, building beneath the surface until Dylan can feel it in every breath she takes, every decision she delays, every moment she spends looking over her shoulder. Sleep becomes a stranger to her, replaced by restless nights filled with worst-case scenarios that feel less like imagination and more like inevitability. Even the spaces that once felt safe, her apartment, her classroom, the familiar halls of Forrester, begin to feel different, as though Remy's presence has seeped into every corner of her life. His shadow lingers in her thoughts, in the silence between conversations, in the hesitation behind every smile she forces for the people around her. And the more she tries to act normal, the more the strain begins to show, cracking through the surface in subtle but undeniable ways. People start to notice, even if they don't yet understand why. Remy, meanwhile, grows bolder, more impatient, as though he senses the pressure building inside her and intends to push it until she finally breaks. His tone shifts, losing what little pretense of friendliness it once held, revealing something colder underneath, something entitled and quietly threatening. He doesn't just suggest anymore, he insists. He reminds her of what he's done for her, repeats the narrative that she owes him, that everything she has somehow traces back to him. It's a distortion of reality so blatant, it would almost be laughable if it weren't so dangerous. And beneath it all, there's that unspoken reminder, always present, always looming, that he can take it all away just as easily as he claims to have helped her build it. Caught in the middle of this tightening trap, Dylan begins to realize that silence may no longer be an option. For too long, she's tried to contain the damage, to keep the truth buried in the hope that she could protect the life she's worked so hard to rebuild. But now, the cost of that silence is becoming too high, too suffocating to ignore. Every moment she waits gives Remy more power, more room to manipulate, more opportunity to twist the narrative into something she may never be able to untangle. And slowly, painfully, a new kind of fear begins to take hold. Not just fear of losing everything, but fear of losing herself in the process. Because every time she considers giving in, even a little, she feels something inside her resist, something that refuses to let Remy turn her into an extension of his damage. That internal conflict reaches a boiling point as the weight of her choices becomes impossible to ignore. Helping Remy would mean stepping into a lie, aligning herself with someone she knows is dangerous, and potentially hurting people who trust her without question. Refusing him, however, risks setting off a chain reaction she may not be able to control. But as the pressure mounts, one truth begins to rise above the chaos. No matter what Remy threatens, no matter what he claims he can destroy, she cannot let him define who she is or what she becomes. It's not a realization that comes with immediate courage or certainty, but it's a start. A small, fragile shift in a situation that has felt completely out of her control. And yet, even as that resolve begins to form, the reality of what lies ahead remains daunting. Because standing up to someone like Remy isn't just about making a choice, it's about facing the fallout that comes with it. If she tells the truth, everything could unravel in an instant. Her connection to him would be exposed, her past dragged into the light, her intentions questioned by people she's come to care about. Trust could shatter, relationships could fracture, and the stability she's built could collapse beneath her feet. But if she doesn't tell the truth, if she keeps playing along, even in small ways, she risks becoming complicit in whatever damage Remy causes next. Meanwhile, Remy's expectations continue to grow, his patience thinning as he waits for Dylan to act. The pressure to approach Deacon looms larger, heavier, turning every interaction into a potential turning point. A simple conversation could become something more, something dangerous, something that sets everything into motion. And the thought of facing Electra with even a hint of what Remy wants feels almost unbearable, like walking straight into a storm she knows she can't control. Every path forward feels like a risk. Every decision, a gamble with consequences that stretch far beyond her alone. But perhaps the most terrifying realization of all is this. Remy doesn't need her to succeed to cause damage. He only needs her to hesitate, to falter, to give him enough time and opportunity to act on his own. And if that happens, if he decides to take matters into his own hands, there's no telling how far he might go or how many lives he might disrupt in the process. That uncertainty hangs over everything, turning every moment into a countdown she can't see but can definitely feel. As the tension continues to rise, the story edges closer to a confrontation that feels both inevitable and unpredictable. Dylan stands at the center of it all, caught between fear and defiance, between the life she's built and the chaos threatening to consume it. And somewhere in that fragile space between breaking and fighting back, one question lingers with growing intensity. When the moment finally comes, will she risk everything to stop Remy, or will his grip on her life prove too strong to break?